Okay. Well, you know, I ain't gonna be but one way.
2-6, yeah.
Good afternoon, everyone. This hearing is called to order. This is a public hearing of City Council's Committee on Commerce and Economic Development. The purpose of this public hearing is to hear testimony on Bill number 170726. The author of 170625 is holding that at his request, so we will only be dealing with the one bill. I recognize the presence of a quorum of this committee, represented in Councilman Dom, Councilman O, Councilman Johnson, Councilwoman Reynolds Brown, and Councilwoman Parker. With that quorum being established, can you please, Ms. Williams, read the title of the bill?
Bill number 170726, an ordinance amending Title 17 of the Philadelphia Code entitled Contracts and Procurement by enacting a new subsection, 17-16053, to provide for additional oversight by the City Council of compliance with all economic opportunity plans for the participation of minority and female workers, minority-owned disadvantaged business enterprises, female-owned disadvantaged business enterprises, and disabled-owned disadvantaged business enterprises.
I'd like to give opportunity for my vice chair, but also the author of the bill to give some introductory remarks.
Thank you.
Councilman O.
Thank you very much, Chairman. I would like to say that the culmination of many people's efforts, certainly I want to recognize Councilman Wilson Good Jr. and the current council members and some former council members who have really dealt with the issue of ensuring that we comply with the Constitution. No American and no person should be discriminated against either through some illegal means that are obvious or through some cultural means that are less obvious. The issue that we face is that qualified people are being systematically excluded from the opportunity to work, and they are not able to participate in projects that are private and projects that are public. But particularly those public projects which we are the sponsors of in this body, in this government, we have disparity studies. We are able to prove how many minorities and women and others are available to work on jobs in skilled positions. It is important that in addition to the new administration and their efforts to ensure that we have opportunities available for all, that we also send a clear message so that we have voluntary compliance, that from this point forward, if you are not meeting the requirements of inclusion, if you are in some way getting away with discrimination, then this body will have the ability to not only debar, we will have the ability to suspend and terminate. And in that process, no one will get paid until this issue is resolved, and it is long overdue. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilman, and thank you for being a proponent and bringing this issue forward in council. There is a historical perspective that I won't even bore people with because it's been said over and over and over and over again, and it's like a broken record. And at some point, the record should stop skipping, and then we should get to the part in the melody where everybody can sing along, everybody can be included, everybody can be assured equal access. So with that, Ms. Williams, will you read the first group to testify? We are going to, at some point, recess our public hearing and go into a public meeting so that we can maintain our quorum, because we know a lot of people want to testify on this. Ms. Williams.
Iola Harper.
Good afternoon, Ms. Harper.
sit over here. All right.
So state your name for the record so that the clerk can memorialize it, and please begin your testimony.
Okay, Iola Harper, Deputy Commerce Director, Office of Economic Opportunity. Good afternoon, Chairman Jones and members of the Committee on Commerce and Economic Development. My name is Iola Harper, and I'm Deputy Commerce Director for the Office of Economic Opportunity. I'm here to offer testimony on Bill number 170726. Where a party has failed to meet EOP obligations, this bill would provide council with a process to unilaterally debar the contractor by resolution or to recommend suspension of payments. The work of OEO is to empower minority, women, and disabled-owned businesses and to foster diversity and inclusion in the Philadelphia workforce. OEO understands the value of oversight as an important accountability tool, and we also understand the concern of council and its constituents that there may not be sufficient recourse for non-compliant contractors on EOP projects. OEO has every desire to continue working with this body to develop and refine a consistent plan for oversight and enforcement of EOPs that both ensures our diverse workers and contractors are treated fairly, and that the city procurement and public works continue to operate efficiently. Regarding workforce inclusion, our colleagues in Labor Standards Unit are best equipped to address such concerns. They have boots on the ground, the reporting infrastructure, and the oversight experience to speak to previous actions taken against non-compliant contractors and plans for enforcement moving forward. When it comes to contracting participation, our office uses a variety of methods to manage non-compliance on EOPs. Payment of suspension is one tool. Payment suspension is effective, and it is also a complex process with many moving parts. It affects OEO, but also procurement, finance, and law. Additionally, it can unintentionally have a negative domino effect and harm the very subcontractors that we are trying to help. If we withhold payment to a prime because of noncompliance, it can interfere with that prime's ability to pay the minority and women-owned subcontractors that are on the contract. It can also slow down a project and decrease the efficiency of the city's contracting and procurement processes. That said, withholding payment has been and will continue to be used as a punitive action when other remedial actions and solutions are found ineffective. Our role of empowering the firms in our registry is tightly bound to our ability to ensure that they are not only included in opportunities, but that they are treated fairly, which includes making sure that they are paid. These factors must be taken into consideration when decisions to hold payments are made. The Economic Opportunity Review Committee, or EORC, is a body that I chair and meets quarterly. Per the code, the EORC is an agent of City Council, and it exists to review the effectiveness and enforcement of EOP legislation. This mandate includes the ability to recommend to Council the debarment of contractors and recipients of city financial assistance by resolution. During my tenure in OEO, this committee has been used primarily to review EOPs, discuss the effectiveness of our office and its partners, to listen to the concerns of our stakeholders, and to hear testimony from contractors and developers regarding their successes and challenges with workforce inclusion and diverse business participation. We could certainly consider increasing the committee's focus on noncompliance by prime contractors and developers, and work in concert with council as we develop that increased focus. Further, we look forward to onboarding 2 EOP enforcement specialists in the next few months. These specialists will be responsible for managing the planned increase in oversight, monitoring the OEO hotline, and preparing reports on EOP progress and outcomes. I would be happy to share those reports with this body. We want to ensure that our office continues to increase effectiveness of its oversight of city contracting, and that we do so in concert with City Council. Our top priorities are always to serve our diverse business community and to make sure that the workforce on city projects and those approved by council reflect Philadelphia's population. We must strike a balance in our oversight and enforcement of these concerns. We must serve these stakeholders while maintaining an efficient and effective procurement and contracting process for the city. We hope that OEO can be a resource for council as these bills progress and evolve to guarantee that we can accomplish both goals.
Thank you. So, are you for the bill? Are you against the bill? I heard a lot. I'm like, are you running for office? I could not tell where you were.
We would like to have more discussion about this bill. As written, I believe that it has the potential to be harmful to our subcontractors and not helpful.
Okay, that you could have got right to that.
Cut to the chase,
All right,
right?
so
I'm sorry.
Let me ask a couple of questions.
Sure.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Can I acknowledge them?
What'd you say, Councilman? Oh, yeah, yes. How many contracts does OEO review on an annual basis?
Contracts? Wow. You know,
Rough guess.
I'm reluctant to give a number. It's substantial, probably
So
over 1,000 contracts, yeah.
So, and they're broken down in professional services, supplies, services, and equipment and construction, right?
That's right.
And they range in dollar amount from how much to how much, roughly?
Typically, the ones we review, $100,000 and up.
Right. And is it safe to say, how many people are in your directory?
In our directory, it's about 2,700. It's 2,764.
How many prime contractors are there in the city of Philadelphia, approximately?
A handful. You mean minority?
No.
Primes?
Primes. It can be of any color.
Again, this is...
Hundreds? Is it safe to say hundreds?
I wouldn't say hundreds.
Say, is it, all right, so we'll go with, is it more than 50?
Yes, more than 50
All right.
prime
That
contractors.
do a lot of so many of them do, so I got one that begins with a P, and you can see his trucks up and down the highway. And they get multiple contracts and kind of get, I'm gonna go with it, DePaul, Paolino, and others, historically, over decades, have dominated the construction road work industry in the city of Philadelphia, correct?
Yes.
All right. Are there any minorities in, or female companies that are in that line of work that get that pro rata
That
share?
volume of work?
Mm-hmm.
No.
All right. So, how often is it when you review something, they fall below the expectation that you set for them on a participation goal?
Thank you.
From a workforce perspective, quite often.
From
a business participation perspective, I don't know, maybe 20-30% of the time they fall short of their EOP goal.
So now I'm going to ask the question that my colleague Wilson Good asked when he was chair of this committee. How many people have you debarred?
During my tenure, zero.
Yeah, zero.
Yes.
How many people have been debarred in your estimation or over the last 4 years?
Point of information, Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Reynolds Brown,
It may be
Councilwoman.
helpful to note that Ms. Iola has been in this position for X number of months. You can answer the
I've
question.
been for 1 year, as of last week.
And so to that end, an additional question could be, and so how many have been disbarred over the last 4 years? Either you or your predecessors should know the answer to that.
Yes, I can get the answer, but I know that the number is low.
All right.
It is under a handful.
I'm going to help you out. I think it was one. Was it one?
Yes.
Wilson, it was zero. So you right on pace.
Okay.
All right, and so
Yes.
I say that not to criticize you, because I support you 100%. We had a bunch of folk with expectations about midweek throughout the city and throughout my district. You've been right there in the face of this to answer questions. So I want my colleague to know that I understand you've only been there a year. It's my understanding that this law is to help you,
Okay.
actually. And so I asked all of that to say that if we do not, my good friend Bruce Crawley over there grew up in public housing. Maybe he don't want people to know that, but I'm going to put it out there anyway.
Okay.
He understands that if you walk into a schoolyard and you say that you're going to punch somebody in the mouth, and then by the end of the day you don't, nobody believes you ever going to punch them in the mouth ever again.
That's right.
And so we have to take some steps to assure for people that you are sworn to take care of, that we will actually punch you in the mouth.
Okay.
And that, so you should work it out, do what you're supposed to do by law. We're not bullies at all, but we are going to be on the right side of public policy when it comes to this.
Yes.
And what is at stake, and then I'm going to pass the mic, what is at stake here is that little bit of $500 million that we're talking about in rebuild.
Right.
And it's only a little. That's not what this bill covers, but it's a little bit. If you multiply that by the 10-year backlog this city has
Right.
on capital projects, we are talking about billions, right? And if you talk about the school district also, you're talking about $4.2 billion in major renovations that we have to do.
Right.
So if we get the prototype right, if we get the model, the beta test right, this can be replicated in all of those things, and all boats will rise, tides or something. It's a
A
quote.
rising tide
Bruce,
lifts all boats.
you know the quote, I don't know it, but you know what I mean.
I do.
Rising, there you go, lifts all boats, that's it. So that is why we're having this hearing, that's why we're having this discussion.
Got it.
That's why we're putting it on the record, and to empower you to be able to do something.
Yes.
With that, is there anyone wants to be recognized? Councilwoman Reynolds Brown and then Councilwoman Parker.
Okay. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
So the record should reflect that this committee is deeply committed to you being successful, that you walked into a circumstance that quite frankly remains broken, and we're deeply committed to righting the ship for the time that we have in front of us. So I would ask to the early questions that the chairman raised, like how many people are in the directory, how many are prime contractors, how many contracts do you review each year? If you could submit that, when budget hearing time comes, give us what the landscape looks like.
I will do that.
The full big picture on all of this particular topic, because it is agonizing to still be stuck in the mud around this issue of leveling the playing field.
Yes.
Who makes the final decision on who is disbarred?
It goes to finance and to law. So this body is already empowered to make a recommendation to finance.
Repeat what you just said.
City Council is already empowered in the Philadelphia Code 17-6. You are already empowered to make a recommendation to finance, recommending debarment. My office also has the ability to recommend debarment to finance and to law. And I believe labor standards has the same ability to make that recommendation.
So we make the recommendation to whom? To law and?
It will go to the finance director.
So ultimately, the finance director makes the decision?
Yes.
Based on information and data that's been fed to
them, and I believe it's done in concert with the law department.
I believe. Okay, who knows the answer to the question?
Do you know, Trevor, for sure, if it's done in concert with law? That's correct. It's done in concert with the law department.
So the ultimate decision rests with finance director and our city solicitor?
Correct.
How often are waivers allowed? Who makes decisions about waivers? What's the process for the consideration of waivers?
Right. So my office has the ability to make decisions about waivers, as does Procurement, I believe, have the ability to make recommendations or to review requests for waivers.
Okay, can we ask the Procurement Commissioner to come to the witness table? So the record needs to reflect there have been no disbarments the 4 years prior to your arrival.
That's right.
No recommendations for disbarment.
Not for disbarment, no.
Okay.
Councilwoman, you want him to testify?
I want to ask you the question. What is your understanding of how waivers are processed?
And can you state your name for the record?
Absolutely. Trevor Day, Procurement Commissioner for the City of Philadelphia. Waivers specific to economic opportunity plans, I don't know specifically if Procurement can, agree to those, but I think policy is we look to OEO to recommend those waivers. Procurement historically has not recommended a waiver for that. We look to OEO to make that
Begs the
determination.
question, why?
What's that?
It begs the question, why?
Because I think OEO's operations is to empower minority and women-owned businesses to do business with the city.
I got that. I guess what I should rephrase the question, how come we haven't debarred anybody?
Oh, we haven't debarred anybody. Is that the question? Okay.
That would be the question.
Okay. My understanding is there have been no requests to debar vendors related to EOP compliance.
So organizations or citizens or subs who are being mistreated or whatever would have to make a request in writing to?
Oftentimes this would come from, OEO or labor standards or a department and saying the vendor isn't compliant with the contract, we're recommending debarment. And so, we'll go through a meeting, internal meeting with the law department, the operating department, OEO, if it's a compliance on EOP or labor standards. We'll internally come to an agreement on a path moving forward. It could be a stop payment, it could be a cure letter, it could be a disposition agreement, which is an agreement that is not a debarment, but ensuring that the vendor is going to comply with the requirements of the contract. There's a variety of solutions.
Okay, so as we prepare for budget next March, you've mentioned a number of different remedies.
Yes.
That are news for me, and actually that's not a big deal because you live and breathe this every day. So I want an accounting of all the various types of remedies that are provided by your department to those who just simply refuse to be in compliance with whatever the stipulations are of that particular contract. Because we need to see if there's any level of penalties imposed to those who simply don't want to get it right.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Councilwoman, we are looking, and stop payment occurs often.
Often means what?
Well, I mean, I've made a request at least 3 or 4 times. I know that Labor Standards has made multiple or facilitated multiple stop payments. So we will compile these numbers and have these ready to present to this body as well.
We really need to see what the big picture looks like.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Councilwoman Parker.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And from a procedural perspective, I can make my comments now versus going into the other meeting.
Whenever you feel comfortable, read your comments. And then right after you read your comments, after this witness testifies, we're going to recess our public hearing, go into a public meeting, allow you to record your vote one way or another, and then we're going to go back into.
Well, I'm fine, Mr. Chairman. I'll wait until we go into the public meeting.
Got it. Is there any other questions? Chair recognizes Councilman Upton.
Thank you very much. Just for clarification,
Sorry, hold up. I also want to recognize the presence of Councilman Green, Councilman Tollenberger, and Councilwoman Sanchez.
thank you very much. For clarification, I believe the circumstance that we've been discussing can be remedied when someone has been frustrated by this process of being excluded, that now, instead of being frustrated, they can go to their council member explain the situation, and we can determine whether or not this is something to be brought before the entire council. And the council can have a hearing or go through the facts, and so now the people have a recourse, and then we have the ability to suspend payment. And that suspension does come at a price, but the benefit is the redressing of a institutionalized discrimination that has gone on too long in this city. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Are there any other persons of the panel wishing to ask questions of this group? Councilman Green.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess my question is generally from your sense, Ms. Harper and Mr. Day. What's the administration's general position on this on these two pieces of bills?
I feel, from the OEO's perspective, we definitely want a partner, and we want supporters as we're trying to do enforcement. But I'd like to see, or I'd like an opportunity to discuss the specifics of this bill and perhaps have it represented in a way that ensures that our subcontractors will not be harmed in the process of holding payments from the prime. And so I think there's some discussion that could be had. I don't know in terms of Commissioner Day's perspective, but my hope was that we could have some conversations around that.
Okay.
So what I'm hearing is that you like the spirit, but concerned on the
Letter.
possible ramifications of this legislation when it goes into effect.
I absolutely support the spirit of this bill.
Okay.
Absolutely support the
Has the
spirit.
law department offered any opinion on this legislation that you're aware of?
Not that I'm aware of.
I'm aware. I could
Okay.
say that.
Okay.
All right, what we want to do is, before we do all of that, I want to recognize Councilwoman Sanchez. Then we're going to go into our public meeting for benefit of a quorum.
Thank you. Thank you to the bill sponsor. I just would like to get the framework by which contracts are done, because I think one of the important points of this, as much as we want to empower OEO and even the procurement office, the fact of the matter is that most of these contracts are designed by different departments even before they get to procurement, right?
That's correct.
Yes.
So what can you do when a project is brought to you in terms of getting us to the spirit of what we've been trying to get to, which is debundling and opportunities? What do you currently have the authority to do as it relates to that?
I mean, in terms of, construction contracts, there's not a lot that procurement takes. We don't take an active role in defining how those contracts are put together, packaged, and put out. So there's not a policy in place to do that. In fact, there's an ad board rule that basically says the procurement department's going to take how it's packaged together and put it out and ensure that there's competition on the opportunity.
And so that's why business as usual happens, right? Because we have a decentralized system where departments design stuff for certain providers, and neither procurement or the Office of Economic Opportunity can do anything about it. And so, as been discussed in some of our procurement sessions, that's why it's even more important to have a kind of stopgap measure until we reform the system that really allows us to ensure that departments are following not only the spirit of what we're talking about, but the spirit of what the mayor has committed to do. Because if the mayor is saying he's committed to this, but his departments continue to design and do business as usual, are we ever going to meet these goals? Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Councilman Green?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is for Ms. Harper. Do you believe you have enough resources to monitor the majority of city contracts?
Well, we can always use more resources, Councilman. to be honest with you. We have 2 new staffers that will be coming on board, but, you know, I would be remiss if I said we
Councilwoman?
are certainly, that we have all the resources that we need. So new resources are always invited and welcomed, and certainly there is enough work to roll in additional individuals into the OEO department.
And if I remember correctly from our conversations we've had, one of the things you're trying to endeavor going forward is to be more involved at the selection process state where a lot of these contracts are selected, and then also doing some of the oversight.
That's right. So we've been working very closely with the CAO's office on the process whereby OEO will be invited to the table when those type of decisions are made. And thanks to Councilwoman Blondell Reynolds-Brown, we have additional staffers to help us with the expansion in our oversight committee program, which is actually we're rolling out in the first quarter of the next calendar year of FY18. So we are moving in that direction of being at the table when decisions are being made, to advocate and to also make sure that the decision makers that are at the table are aware of the landscape and are aware of the availability of diverse vendors for various opportunities.
But considering, you know, the city is a $4 billion entity, and, you know, we are in a challenging financial perspective in reference to general fund dollars, and although there's been some additional dollars been added to your department for oversight, it's clearly not enough for the entire city. So I would think, I know you stated you have support for the spirit of this legislation, but I think and looking at the bill and having an opportunity to talk with the sponsor, that this provides another tool for those contracts that we don't have enough opportunity to have full oversight, that we can stop them from moving forward and take the steps that we can in order to make sure that for those who say they're going to come do X, Y, Z, and do not because we didn't have the resources to provide the oversight. I know this body on numerous economic development projects and other type of initiatives have provided financial incentives and others based on what was proposed to occur, but then sometimes does not occur.
That's
and
right.
so having a tool to be able to stop payment through, to me, this is a, like in the legal world, you know, often you have opportunities where you provide individuals, you're almost deputizing them to do civil enforcement when sometimes the law enforcement doesn't have all the resources they can do. So looking at this legislation, having a chance to talk with Councilman O, I think this legislation provides that opportunity where council can play in that role and provide additional eyes and ears for OEO when there are contracts that are going through, they're not, people are not living up to what they said they're supposed to do.
Yes, I absolutely, I hear what you're saying and
thank you.
understand. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. I want to recognize Councilwoman Blackwell's presence in this committee. So what we're going to do is we are going to temporarily suspend our public hearing, and we're going to go into our public meeting where I recognize Councilwoman Parker.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for the leeway. I wish to be recorded as voting aye on Bill number 170726. I have to leave the committee meeting due to some outstanding affairs that will take me outside of the building. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You are welcome, Councilwoman, and thank you for making it in here in spite of that. All right? Pardon me? All right, we will now resume our public hearing on Bill number 170726. Are there any other questions for this panel, Councilwoman? No? You're going to stick around just in case we do?
Sure.
Thank you so very much. Ms. Williams, will you please read the names of those who will testify next?
Bruce Crowley, Solomon Jones, Nick Shinoy, and Jyoti Varghese.
And for the record, we want to recognize that Solomon Jones is not a hustler. He knows what that means. No, that was the title of it. Let me say that publicly. That was the title of his speech at an event, your event, in fact, and it was a riveting speech, and I never forgot that. You going to join us at the witness table? Thank you all for your patience. Please state your name, pull the mic closer to you if you're going to testify, and please state your name and begin your testimony. Mr. Crawley.
Good afternoon, and thank you very much for hearing this testimony, Mr. Chairman and members of council. My name is Bruce Crawley. I'm chairman. I'm not chairman, I just promoted myself. I'm president of Millennium 3 Management, Inc., a local communications firm that also does management consulting. I'm pleased to have the opportunity to testify today on an issue that not only negatively impacts minority and female business owners, but also damages the city of Philadelphia's economy as a whole. Most obviously, this bill on contracts and procurement can help to ensure that minority and female-owned contractors actually have an opportunity to gain the business experience that their participation in city contracts ought to provide. On the other hand, if prime contractors are allowed to continue to limit minority and female participation to a pass-through role, those firms will never gain the in-the-field experience that will improve their competence and demonstrate their expertise. In addition, if minority firms are limited illegally to pass-through roles, those firms will have far less need to hire craftsmen and women from their communities. And those minority and female craftsmen, too, will be deprived of meaningful career-building experience. If a bill such as this one is not finally passed, then unscrupulous owners, developers, and construction managers will still be able to limit the growth of aspiring minority construction firms by maliciously slowing their payment schedules, damaging their credit ratings, and destroying their workforces. If you wonder why there are so few minority construction firms in our city, and why they have such difficulty in running profitable businesses and generating surpluses like their mainstream counterparts, look no further than the absence of a bill such as this one. At the end of the day, when Philadelphia finally becomes more competent at managing this part of its overall procurement responsibility, it will gain the advantages of having a larger pool of strong and competent bidders for its RFP processes, which will increase competitive bidding and reduce municipal costs. The city will, in the process, expand its construction industry workforce and increase its tax base. So you see, this bill's benefits are not limited to minority and female business owners. Unfortunately, there's been far too much lip service paid in Philadelphia over the years to the concepts of compliance and enforcement. Regrettably, the city has done an abysmal job in both of these areas. The passage of a bill such as this one and the assumption of major ongoing responsibility finally for its successful enforcement by City Council is critically important. It will help to eliminate the ongoing cynicism by prime contractors, joint venture partners, developers, construction managers, and owners who have simply winked and shrugged when participation goals have been set because they have known full well that they would never really have to achieve them. They know that the city has never really demonstrated the political will, and I think that was referred to earlier today, never demonstrated the political will to put the necessary teeth into its already existent compliance regulations. The offending businesses, both minority and mainstream, have been fully aware that there have never been adequate budgetary allocations made to ensure that violators are identified and held accountable for their transgressions. Let me move now to some few comments about the structure of the actual bill. I would respectfully recommend, first of all, that the bill's subjectivity in the determination of what constitutes a violation in these matters be substantially eliminated. In that regard, the term quote-unquote reasonable grounds, I would suggest, should be replaced by language that specifically defines precisely what constitutes a violation. In fact, the language should be so clear that any potentially offending participant, contractor, developer, or applicant for financial assistance should know definitively when they are about to cross the enforcement red line into an area that would lead in no uncertain terms to stoppage of payments, termination of contract, to suspension and eventually debarment. The bill should codify, for example, the specific violations that will bring about enforcement activities. For example, there should be periodic reviews throughout the term of each contract to ensure that inclusion goals are being met not only at contract end, when it's too late, but also incrementally and on schedule throughout the course of the project. The lack of achievement of these pre-established interim goals should constitute grounds for cessation of contract payments, immediate termination of the subject contract, and for the imposition of a 1 to 5 year suspension. In the case of repeated similar actions, those violations should lead to permanent debarment. I understand that debarment now is defined as 3 years. Doesn't make any sense. By the way, it has probably never made sense for debarment in these cases to be defined as a 3-year term. First of all, the prospect of developers bidding on multiple large city-related projects within that time frame is minimal. That being the case, a 3-year debarment, quote unquote, certainly does not constitute much of a deterrent to unscrupulous behavior. 3 years is more appropriate as a term for suspension. A permanent debarment, on the other hand, would clearly constitute a meaningful deterrent and a reminder that city procurement should be approached ethically and legally or not at all. In addition, there should be similar enforcement procedures in place to eliminate the ongoing utilization of businesses that operate as minority and female fronts. For example, when the City Council's field inspectors and auditors discover that a subcontractor or joint venture partner is not self-performing his or her portion of the contract as specified in the RFP, but is instead operating as a pass-through entity, then the full effect of the enforcement procedures should be brought to bear against the minority and the mainstream violators. When I speak of the enforcement-related cynicism of violators over the years, I vividly recall a breakfast meeting at the old Four Seasons Hotel between me, Anthony Fullard, who now serves as an executive vice president of my firm, M3M, and an executive of a national construction management firm that was then doing business in Philadelphia. When Fullard and I asked, as officers then of the African American Chamber of Commerce, about how the executive's company responded to MBEC imposed inclusion goals, he just smiled and said such goals didn't concern him at all. He said further that he had adopted a policy at his company of signing on to virtually any commitment to Philadelphia inclusion goals presented to his company, because he knew he would never have to fully achieve them, and there would be no substantive consequences if he didn't do so. Each year, he carefully explained, whenever he would be asked about goal achievement by the city on current contracts, he would simply say that his company was still, quote unquote, working toward full achievement. In the meantime, the overall project would continue to move on schedule toward full completion. The construction manager always knew that such a response was more than enough for the questioners from the city of Philadelphia. He also knew that eventually his project would be fully completed, minority goal achievement or not, that his firm would be fully compensated for its work, and there would be no further discussion whatsoever about minority or female inclusion goals. That kind of attitude has not been the exception to the rule, unfortunately. It has rather been the norm. It has been business as usual. Without a bill such as the one before you today, we will continue to experience lack of compliance and enforcement, the stifling of minority contract development as the next generation of major contractors. I hear people ask in earlier comments whether we have sufficient numbers of minority contractors. If you look at the Philadelphia Business Journal's list of the largest general contractors in the Philadelphia region, and specifically Philadelphia, you see a list of 30 largest. L.F. Driscoll has about $925 million a year in revenues. And then under them is Intech. Driscoll's in Bala Cynwyd, so they're in the region but not in the city. But then you go to Intech, which is definitely in the city. They do in excess of $400 million a year, and there's not a single black firm on that list. Not one, the top 30. And after all these years, and in a city wherein African Americans, Hispanics, and Asians constitute 63% of the population, it's about time. But we won't get there if they can't generate revenue, if they can't have meaningful contracts, if they can't gain the experience they need to bid as primes. The ongoing economic marginalization of the 81% of this city's population that happens not to be white male is at the root of this problem. This is bigger than this conversation we're having today. For the sake of this city's future, to reduce economic marginalization and to expand its tax base, please pass a fortified version of this bill. It's long overdue. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Crowley, for your testimony. Please bring the mic closer to you. Just state your name
Oh, okay.
and begin your testimony, please.
Yes. Good afternoon.
You don't have to lean in, just put it to you.
Can you hear me? All right. Good afternoon, Councilman Curtis Jones, Councilman O, and the members of the committee. I am pleased and I thank for the opportunity to testify in support of the bill. I'm glad that I had the opportunity last year to at least mention that the need for enforcement over the last 7 years. I am the owner of TJ Grace Enterprises, an electrical engineering professional services firm. If you look at it as a women and minority-owned electrical engineering firm, very few. So you'd think, why is it that I'm not even getting the sub-consultant portions that, so I see firsthand the problems in the whole system. And I'm also a previous city employee and an engineer who was a city, so I understand the insides of the whole system. And I have proposed several measures that we can do. I think this bill intent is great. I think it needs to be more comprehensive. In order that the punitive measure should be the last resort, but we can provide suggestions that prevent that kind of measures, administrative procedures. Some of the things I encourage, I have specific, I think with the help of OEO, that's why I wanted to speak to Iola Harper. OEO, each city department's project managers, the primes and the sub as a team needs to improve communication and transparency. And there should be procedural means of accomplishing that so that you will ensure participation of the ranges that is promised in the proposal, in the proposals. Some of the way I suggesting is to improve transparency of city contracts. I'm basically, I don't know, I'm specifically speaking about professional services contracts because that is my experience and of that. So there are certain procurement procedures. Also, procurement should be involved in that too. So there should be means for improving that transparency with all those involved in it. So one of the problems we are having is typically on a proposal, the primes contact the subs only during proposal time. They just gather the information, throw it in there. After that, you hear nothing. You hear nothing from the departments, you hear nothing from OEO, you don't hear anything. When you try to call up on it, they'll come up with some excuses. So that is why, because we are completely in the blinders of what's going on in a contract, we need to be in the loop in the communication. So whenever a prime is awarded a contract, whether it's an on-call contract, right away, the subs should be informed through letter or email that they received so-and-so contract with this amount, and you are listed as a sub with a certain percentage. Just the fact that subs are informed, you can go back, hey, this is this kind of project, I can help you with this. So we can be more proactive in reaching out to the primes, and we should have access to the department project managers. We are completely set aside, you know. So I do think there's responsibility on the department side to make sure how are you going to meet this contract requirement, how are you up front, in the beginning of the project. It is not when at the end of the project, oh, by the way, you did not meet the contract, how are you going to do it? In the beginning of the project, you know, that is when in the kickoff meeting, be involved, okay, you have, this is the scope, what percentage, what is the scope that you can to the listed subs on the contract. So that is an easy measure that I think that can be implemented. That will help a lot so that we are actively involved in this process. Also, when you have on-call proposals, on-call contract, the procurement, I mean, as part of the procurement and OEO, there should be a requirement where we provide a letter and we acknowledge what the primes promised, so we know this is what they asked us to do. So basically improving transparency in the city process. Another tool that we have is, I think the OEO is currently, I think it's inefficient in the way of utilizing to improve monitoring contracts. And there's a program out there which the city OEO has it, the Minority MWDSBE Inclusion Compliance Monitoring System. There is a tool out there so that you can tell what contracts are out there, but it's not utilized properly and is not fully used by all departments. I know certain departments use it better than others, and I think the OEO itself, you say understaffed, but the certain staffs are more proactive than others. So there needs to be working with OEO regarding doing the job they're supposed to do, you know? So utilizing the current system better. So that's something that I can suggest. And also the departments, making them departments accountable. I know firsthand which certain departments who are not very diversity friendly, and they have no incentive, so they have more reason to close their eyes, you know? So currently, there is inconsistency in city departments and their commitment to diversity. So since they are the first line of defense, if they don't make the effort in the primes to comply, there are less chances that the primes will comply. So again, it's the whole team that needs to be involved in it. So one of my recommendations is department and project managers to address in the project upfront kickoff meeting. So that should be like a procurement procedure, basically, to be including OEO and sub-consultants.
May I interrupt a second? The author of this legislation has stated that those kinds of concerns, he has introduced a bill on, and maybe he can speak to that.
I just wanted to assure you and everybody else that separately, I think it was a year ago or a year and a half ago, I did introduce a bill on a code section in Philadelphia that basically states everything you're saying.
I don't
yeah,
know.
so it hasn't come to hearing. It was distributed. I was happy to hear about a year ago our then our new income, well, I can't say that. Well, one of our city representatives or officials basically stated what you just said.
I've been talking to everyone.
And what I had distributed to her, so I felt that the administration would go ahead and do that. But I do have a bill that would address everything you said. The issue is that bill is for the administration. And one of the issues that we're dealing with today is what happens when the administration, despite everything you said, does not do that. Anyone can come to a council person. It doesn't have to be at the end of the contract. It could be at the very beginning to say, you know what, they just showed up and they don't have anyone of color, no women or anything, or any of the issues that you raised, and then we will look at it. We can give it to the city, or we could look at ourselves, and we could just suspend the entire project until they get into compliance before they move forward. This enforcement bill is about the power of city council to enforce, and we will, I'm sure, over time improve it. But one of the things that I want to say is I'm very much interested in getting this bill passed, and we can always deal with that. The other issue that you're talking about, how we give guidance to the administration and ensure, as you just said, that the subcontractor, the minority woman-owned business, is given a description of the project, how much money's involved, what their role will be, that there will be a contract between the subcontractor, the prime contractor. There may even be a confession of judgment that if for some reason the prime contractor is not using the minority contractor, they should know who they're contracting with. Then there may be other types of issues. But we want to empower fairness and not a bullying and ignoring of women and minority contractors that has unfortunately gone on.
Yes. And I appreciate if I could get a copy of the bill and if, before it passes, be involved in it. So I thank you for that. That's definitely needed because I am seeing, basically, you're just used for your name up front. That's it, for many contracts. And another aspect I wanted to mention was in the prime contracts, when an opportunity for prime contracts come, which I just put as a proposal in, it's something that I can do a great job, right? But when that opportunity comes, even though you would have the best proposal and the best price, there is a certain stigma associated with, can a small company like that? And so and you're competing with major firms. So that's a disadvantage, and eventually I want to consider maybe small set aside for certain smaller projects, or maybe single discipline project. You know, if that would help us to get more prime contracts, more like single discipline projects, or smaller. You know, and I also a few other things. I don't know. I know this is an enforcement. Maybe it could be part of the other bill. Another major problem that I'm seeing is, there are other large firms that are so-called minority, all right? But they're not disadvantaged. They're not disadvantaged in any sense. They're not DPE. We should not be competing with that, because when you set aside, the city of Philadelphia set aside minority women participation, but not disadvantage. Only federally funded projects require disadvantage. So what I suggest and recommend is for city projects also use the disadvantaged DBE as a criteria, in order that large so-called minority firms we don't have to compete with that.
So what we want to do today, because what you're saying is very important, but there is a federal designation, DBE, and they do their contracting a little different than we do the city.
Right.
But there's a lot to learn from them.
Yes.
On how to create segregated markets for smaller firms so
Yes.
they can compete.
Right.
Which I think the author of this, Councilman O, is keenly aware of. But what we want to do right now, because
Okay.
if you can see
All
we're
right.
losing members,
Yes, yes.
is get the testimony out.
All right, yes, I appreciate this opportunity, and I really support this bill.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Good afternoon,
Good
council
afternoon.
members. Thank you for the opportunity to come here and support the bill. I'm the president, Narasimha Shenoy, also known as Nick, generally known as Nick Shenoy, president and the CEO of the Asian American Chamber of Commerce of Greater Philadelphia. And, you know, Mr. Bruce Crowley has elegantly stated the problem and requirement for enforcement. I'm fully with it. As an Asian business people, we have some additional issues I'd like you to address at this stage. One of the things is basically the opportunity for the Asian contractors to do business with the city. The city usually, unless you're a union contractor, you do not have that kind of opportunities in the city. So there needs to be a way to come up with system that allows the small non-union contractor also participate in this procurement system. I know it's a difficult issue, but unless we have given some opportunity for the small businesses to get into the construction business area, I don't see any progress being made in this area. And I know the administration has done the rebuild program, which is intended to have these small minority businesses also to grow, is one area we could really look at whether it is possible to have this kind of this thing. And frankly, I looked at these statistics, and I could not identify more than 2 contractors participating in the mainstream, construction contractors, that is. I know in some sectors we have we have gained some good grounds, and the others not. I know OEO is, as I'm one of the members there, they are doing a job to monitor it. There needs to be a tool to basically enforce. At least the tool has to be in place. Whether how often do you implement it is the question of the general contractor, see how much violation he has done. So the discretion is always there, but the tool needs to be there. So having said so, and thank you for bringing that, Councilman O, thank you for bringing that bill, and we are here to support it. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Mr. Jones, thank you for your patience.
Thank you very much for having me. Members of council, I appreciate the opportunity to testify before you this afternoon, not as a columnist, not as a radio host, but as a Philadelphian, as someone who grew up in the very poor neighborhoods that still keep us as the poorest big city in America. In my view, it's reprehensible that we see billions of dollars of construction going on in our communities, in the very communities where 33% of black people live in poverty, and 40% of Latinos live in poverty, and 37% of our children live in poverty, and yet we do not have access to those billions of dollars in taxpayer-funded construction. Money that comes from women who work 2 and 3 jobs to take care of a household by themselves. Money that comes from people who are struggling just to get by. Money that comes from people who could use those jobs, and yet they don't have access. It is reprehensible to me that we are sitting here still talking about this issue in 2017. It's unacceptable. As somebody who pays taxes in the city of Philadelphia, who lives in the city of Philadelphia, who's hounded for tax money, right, in the city of Philadelphia, it's unacceptable to me that people who come from the neighborhoods where I grew up cannot get access to those jobs because, frankly, what I have not seen is the political will to make it happen. It's reprehensible. And so I support this bill. I support, frankly, anything that would allow our businesses, our companies, our people to have access to these jobs. And with all due respect to the administration, I don't see how anything could harm black and brown and women contractors any more than they are already being harmed now. Right now today, there's a minority-owned contractor, and I won't say the name of the company, but they're trying to get hundreds of thousands of dollars that they are owed for a project that they began work on in June 2016. They stopped being paid in November 2017, November of 2016, but they kept working because they knew that if they stopped working, they would have bigger problems than they would otherwise. They finished the work in February 2017, and they are still waiting to get paid. Now, the city knows about it, OEO knows about it, the city law department knows about it, and now you know about it. They stopped paying that company knowing that that company had no choice but to stay on that project. And so I don't see how anything that this bill would do or anything else would do could make them worse off than that. And the deep thing about it is that what Bruce Crawley said is right, that you can literally, if you are the prime contractor, and you have a subcontractor that's really forced to kind of work under your conditions, that you can just wait them out, right? So I didn't get paid, but I'm going to keep doing this work because I have to. And maybe you wait me out, and maybe I sue, maybe I don't, maybe I go for your bond, maybe I don't, but maybe you end up just paying me pennies on the dollars of what I'm owed because there is no teeth in the legislation that's available now, in the rules that are available now. To me, OEO is operating with one hand tied behind its back. And, you know, I've heard people on my radio show call in and say, oh, it's the black women that's running the OEO. No, it's not. It's the fact that we are forced by executive order, right? Because the mayor could change this if he wanted to right now. We're operating under an executive order where the mayor has said we are going to negotiate with union contractors, knowing that the unions are made up of 76% white folk, 67% suburban folk, and that 99% of them are male. And so if that's the labor pool that you're choosing from, guess what? Black people, Latino people, Asian people, if that's the pool that you're choosing from, they're not going to get the work anyway. It's reprehensible to me. And so anything that we can do to make sure that our folk get this work, we have to do it. Because no way in the world that in the poorest big city in America, we are forcing people in these poor communities to sit there and watch billions of dollars being spent around them for work that they could do if they were given the opportunity. I support this bill. I support anything that is going to put our people to work. We should not still be, after a decade, the poorest big city in America with all of the money that's being spent in Philadelphia. It's wrong, and we have to correct it now. So we'll see what happens with that company, and we'll see what happens with those negotiations that are going on right now today, as we are here, right? But I'm committed to using my voice to keep on talking about this issue, to using my voice to keep on informing the people about this issue, to use my voice to keep on pressing for our people to get paid, to get jobs, because there's no way in the world that it should still be like this today. Thank you, gentlemen and lady, for allowing me to testify.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. Do we have questions for this panel? Seeing none, and that in no way indicates that your testimony was less than, it was more than enough to answer the questions we had. It's the exact opposite. So I want to thank you for your continued advocacy on this issue, and thank you also for the information that you have that can make this legislation better in time.
Can I make it?
And we are committed, and let me just say, many of us, you know, we look at the intended, unintended consequences, the upside, the risk, and this is not a perfect bill. But we should never let the imperfect be the enemy of the good. And it's a step in the right direction. So, without any further ado, you okay? All right. Thank you for your time.
Can I add one more suggestion?
If you want it voted out,
I'm sorry.
I'm losing members.
We've got other panels too, so.
To encourage participation, like you're saying, that another thing we can do is, I know some of the board members of certain large firms will also consider allowing percentage of minority and women in their own company, whether it's percentage in the board, if that could help, you know, bring more people.
Thank you so much. Ms. Williams, can you read the next panel to testify, please?
David Richardson, L. Trina Woodson, and Daryl Trotes.
Thank you all for your patience. And please come up to the witness table. Pull the mics to you. And please state your name for the record, and then begin your testimony. Okay. Got it. Thank you.
Sorry. Hello? Can you hear me? My name is David Richardson. I'm the president of D.O. Richardson and Associates. We're a small Philadelphia-based private investigations agency founded in 1990 here in Philadelphia. My company is certified as MDBE. I'd like to thank the Councilman O, for inviting me to testify today. I'd like to voice my support for this bill. I think it's about time that there's some way to enforce compliance. I can tell you that my company, I've had experience where we've been named as a subcontractor on Philadelphia contracts, on state contracts, and that's about it. You never see a dollar out of it later on. I've seen in one occasion.
Could you repeat that last point? You never saw a dollar out of?
Never saw a dollar. We would be named as a subcontractor, saying that we're going to get up. In some cases, they even will name a dollar amount. And yet, months go by, a year goes by, you never see any referrals, you never see $1 out of that contract. In the past, I wouldn't know who to complain to or anything like that. At least this has been informative that with this bill, you're saying you can actually contact your council person and maybe get an idea across. I can tell you in the past, I had a contract where we were named as we were going to provide the surveillance and investigation services on a school board contract. This is maybe 15 years ago now. I remember even during the bidding process, we even sat down with members of the school board, and we were represented that we were going to be the ones handling the investigations on their workers' comp and whatnot. And sure enough, not $1 materialized out of that. I think I was contacted by OEO maybe 2 or 3 years into this contract. They wanted to know, I guess, trying to do some kind of enforcement, but basically I guess they never really gave me anybody to talk to. They just said, please fill out this form. Have you been paid anything? I filled it out that we had not been paid any money by this company. They hadn't sent any referrals our way. And basically nothing ever came of it. I guess we just never heard another word about it, and that's it. It seems like there is just zero enforcement. So I kind of want to be brief today. Just saying that, again, I support this bill. I think it's about time that there's something that's going to be done. Just on one suggestion I'd just like to make, I don't know if it's relevant also to help in enforcement, because it seems like the impression I get is that OEO might be understaffed and they're not going to be fully able to actually monitor what's going on. Maybe you want to get the Office of Inspector General involved, that people can call into there and they can actually go out, especially with these construction sites. Again, it's mostly suburbanites, white men that are working on these sites. And yeah, the work is not going, it's not going to Philadelphia. I think it should go to Philadelphia residents. You should see men of color, women of color out there, and you don't. It's a real shame. In any case, that's my testimony for today. I'll end it.
Thank you so much for your testimony. Ma'am?
Good afternoon, Council and Chairman and Council. I don't think so. Good afternoon, Chairman and Council. My name is Trina Woodson. I am the president and founder of Scoops Promotional Marketing. We are entering our 27th year of business. About me, I'm a female entrepreneur LLC. I've been doing business in the city of Philadelphia for 27 years. Started with open up an ice cream parlor, and then I pivoted and expanded and start doing event planning and promotional products when people ask to have imprints on items. I have been fortunate enough to make enough money to able to educate my children. The opportunities in the city are dismal. My goal is to expand my staff. Okay, the OEO procedure. It can go smoothly as long as you don't mind filling out 30 pages of documentation, picture being buried up to your neck to determine if you're a female. and possess enough melanin in your skin. It's not a bad process. However, it's insulting if it doesn't translate to either the bottom line or the top line. And I'm going to give a little example of experience I had with a city project. Not to single out anyone, but the status quo pattern is over and over again happening. Scoops has been providing assortment of shirts for the Philadelphia Marathon for the last 8 or 9 years. While I appreciate the revenue for producing 5,000 shirts, I feel that Scoops has continually proved itself. I requested for the 9th time to be able to bid on the 30,000 runner shirts. It's 150,000 part of it, and some way I keep being left out of it. They have 8 parts: shirts for runners, full marathon, half marathon, expo, and online catalog. This year, the person who handled the Broad Street run moved over to marathon and brought all of her contractors. One person for the Broad Street project. The person who does the shirts for the Broad Street project has done shirts for 18 out of the 20 years, so there's not been any flexibility of bringing in new people. And how can a system work if you're not able to get the experience or the capacity? Okay, and I've admit my prices have been, I've been told that my prices were too high, but my dollars are reinvested into the city of Philadelphia and building the local economy. It's hard to compete with multi-million-dollar businesses for whom each business is 15 to 20% of their monthly revenue. For me, it may be only 15 or 20% of my annual revenue. For them, not getting the bid means low profitability. For me, not getting it means hindering my expansion. Over the many years I have been in business in Philadelphia, I have seen the Democratic, the Republican National Convention, the Pope visit come to the city with million-dollar budgets. Participation has been unjust. Many of the awarded businesses are overly represented by white males, mainly living outside of the city. Problems are no incentive, no penalty. I have lived and worked in University City for the past 40 years. Here are a few of the current and proposed projects just in my neighborhood. All of these below projects involve city negotiation, granting of land. The city comes to the table when they're bringing in all these huge projects, but where are they when it's time to, bring in the vendors and workers? Number one, the West Philadelphia Promise neighborhood, a $30 million project with the potential of $30 million matching funds in the city of Philadelphia. 2, University City, led by Westford, $2.4 billion project. 3, the Schuylkill Yards project, $3.2 billion project in the Promise Zone. 4, in the proposed bid by the City of Philadelphia for Amazon, 2 of the 3 projects are located in University City near the Promise Zone. That's actually my area. The question needs to be asked, are longtime and marginalized Philadelphians and business going to benefit from this, or to just watch again as everyone who gets the award buy more expensive houses outside of the city boundaries with our tax revenue? There are minority-owned companies around Philadelphia that have been so trained by experience that they are unwilling to submit bids as primaries or seek to partner with primaries. They wouldn't get the bid as a primary because they've never been a primary. That's the catch-22. They wouldn't get the bid as a primary even if after being a sub for the same reason. That's the catch-44. How can experience be gained if experience is not offered? It is my hope that the same amount of effort going into bringing these great projects to our city will be put into developing the local minority business community by awarding contracts that they can grow with and into. The great city of Philadelphia needs to make the decision. What are the most important values, and to whom, and to where the revenue and profits from this contract go? Penalties and targets should be discussed. Rotating contracts. So if there's an area where somebody's getting a contract for 18 years, it should be some way where they can rotate it and give other people an opportunity. And co-primary contracts. Most businesses would love to work with any large company as an equal, but not just as a subordinate partner. The large company would also be tasked with helping co-awardees in building capacity so both business can execute the contract. There are probably many ideas floating around today. Please let us know how you will implement them. This would be better than asking us to speak again and again about chronic issues that nobody has solved for the last 20 years. So if the question is, what gives, are we supposed to be smiling and gracious for giving the opportunity to speak, or are we supposed to smile and be nice in public forums such as this? Because at the end of the day, I have yet to attend any of these meetings where anyone I know has actually received substantial awards, bids, or revenue from any of the meetings. So millions of taxpayer dollars are spent thinking about the problem, but no tax dollars are spent addressing the problem. And addressing the problem means that awarding bids to minority firms, in case no one actually told you that. Rebuild is square in the middle of these current and proposed projects. The continual challenge for the City of Philadelphia is to seriously consider how strong their focus is on adopting and implementing participation. One of my end concerns is, all of the above projects, what is in it for us? And I just like to make a side comment. I think that when these projects are negotiated land with the promise zone and all these buildings going up every year, that when you're at the table with the developers and the prime, this is when the contract should be developed, not putting the weight on OEO. That's the after effect. You have to be strong in the beginning in order to have the business be shared upon your residents.
Thank you. So I want everybody to know that the reason why we're rushing along is not that we have to do lunch, is that we have to legally advertise this so that it is reported out of committee tomorrow. So by 3:15, we have to do this. And so that's why I'm sharing with you.
Okay.
You know, I don't want you mad. I just want you to know that's what we're trying to do. All right? So thank you for your time. Are there any questions for this panel? Seeing none. Ms. Williams, thank you for your testimony, guys.
Rochelle Bilal, Greg Brinkley, Shantae Love, and Emmanuel Busey.
And what I liked about your testimony, ma'am, was you mentioned for the last 20 years there hasn't been that kind of enforcement. So I would hearken back to the days of Wilson Good when it first came on with Lou Blackwell and others that fought for it. There was a young director of the MBEC, Minority Business Enterprise Council, that he was on fire with passion about this. He was the best, ever did it, except for you, Ola. His mentor, Jim Rountree mentor was Curtis Jones Jr., who ran that for 4 years, put $583 million into minority and females' hands, but that was in another lifetime. All right, here's what we're going to do. State your name for the record, please. Feel free to abbreviate your testimony, or it won't get passed.
No, we abbreviate. Rochelle Bilal. First of all, I'm a different kind of Democrat, and I'm the president of the Guardian Civic League, and I'm a citizen of Philadelphia, lived here all my life, have been here. I am free to activate myself in everything in this city going on. Just letting you know. I'm no longer confined. I'm here to testify on bill number 170726. I've listened to people. I had to cater my response to this. OEO, Office of Economic Opportunity, basically hurt my heart to hear that they just didn't do nothing. No recommendations for disbarment, no recommendations for suspension, plenty of recommendations to stop payment, but none was stopped. No active role in checking on contractors or subcontractors in this city, either against or for them. They want business as usual. And this is not to slight the person who only in 8 months in office. But when I did the research, nobody in economic development has done nothing in this city to check these contractors coming into this city. Nothing. Please don't tell us about what you are going to do since you haven't been, we can't trust you to do anything at this point. I'm in 100% of this enforcement bill. Let me do it a little deeper. I'm in 100% in support of this enforcement bill. Teeth is what is needed in contracts, projects in this city. It's been too long that this city has trusted contractors, unions to do the right thing when they haven't. This city has continually received, oops, we've changed our mind. I guess you remember the loft situation. My bad, let me give you a few dollars so we can smooth this over. And yet, people are not employed in this city. Poverty increased over your watch. Yet our people are still unemployed, and African American contractors or subcontractors are still out of work. 2017, this city government has the opportunity to set the standards for our children, for our grandchildren. Once this is set, no one can ever come into our city, lie to you, lie to me, lie to the people of the city who tax dollars they take out there, and think they can get away with it. Remember, poverty has increased under your watch. And at this point, it's time to make some serious decisions that's going to make a difference in Philadelphia. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Palau. Mr. Brinkley.
Under 3 minutes.
Good afternoon,
Good afternoon.
Chairman, council members. I'm going to get straight to the point. My name is Greg Brinkley. I am representing People United for Justice and Accountability. I'm also the president of the Abbotsford Homes Tenant Council. And I want to say I am strongly in support of this bill. I think clearly racism is inherited in this bill. Real simple, I don't know how, and it's just basic common sense to me. If you're not employing black businesses, which we hope employs black youth, if nobody's employing businesses and youth, then what does that say to our youth? I bring a unique perspective to this here. I didn't need to go work as a corrections officer at Graterford, and I'm a retired corrections officer at Graterford. But I get sick and tired of, and I mean Graterford is like 85 to 90% black and Latino. And I don't think that's an accident, because we all know that if you got a job, a decent job, that keeps you occupied. So if we're not getting those jobs in the city of Philadelphia, what do we expect black youth to do? It's a real simple proposition here. The other thing is, if we don't have jobs, the way the gentrification is going, we won't be able to afford to live in the city. I mean, like Solomon Jones said, the political will. The political will. And the one thing I have to say, with all due respect to all the council people, they should be here, because I think this is important. What is more important than saving our youth by giving them jobs? I know the direct correlation of the school to prison pipeline. I escorted many of what would be some of your grandchildren, 14, 15. This is real. I did this. I'm not reading from a book. I don't even have a prepared text, because I don't have to do that, because I see it. And I escorted them through the halls of Graterford down into what we call the administrative segregation, commonly referred to as the hole, because there are no opportunities for them. I'm talking 16, 17. Nobody's even teaching them about work. And when I sit up here and I hear the unions, and I'm a union man. I used to be on the executive board of District 1199C Henry Nicholas. So I support that concept. But firstly, I'm a black man, unapologetically. I have sons, I have grandsons, I have a lot of people in this city. I don't understand what's the problem. I do my taxes, other people do their taxes, and to watch that go out, watch that go to Jersey and those other places, and not give our children opportunities is absolutely sickening. Thank you for listening.
Mr. Brinkley, we appreciate your consistency and your advocacy for people in the city of Philadelphia, big and small, big issues, small issues. You take them on, and I appreciate it. Ma'am?
Thank you, Council. My name is Shantae Love from Every Murder is Real, and I am a different kind of Democrat. And I'm here to support this bill 170726 as one of the agencies that focuses on healing families from homicide. I was forced by my spirit to come down here and make a testimony because when I look at the crime rates and the poverty rate, I know how large I have to fill seats in my office. I know how many people do I need to recruit because I know that there will be crime. And because of this, what has occurred in this war here, it appears that we have a thug-like mentality, and we're asking you to stop it. We're asking you to help us take back our city, help take back our economics, so that, guess what? The 500 plus families that walked in my doors last year, numbers have got to be stopped because their young sons and daughters that walk in and don't even have a job is too detrimental to our existence as a people. This is more than, this is about black, brown, this is about our living in Philadelphia. Because at some point, we will no longer be called Philadelphians. Because we will have no economic growth, we will not have the ability to live here, and guess what? We will be filling the prisons and emptying our own neighborhoods. So I am in support of this bill, 170726. We need you to do this. Thank you.
Thank you. Listen, ma'am.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. No, that's fine, you guys okay? Oh, okay. Hello, everyone, thank you. How's everybody doing? My name is Sister Talia Taylor, and I'm also a different kind of Democrat as well. And many of you know me as from working with the youth, and that's why I felt compelled of coming down here and testifying, because my main objective is to help the youth, give them opportunities, as many opportunities as they can. And if we get a start on getting these jobs out, then they'll have something to look forward to in the next few years, in the next 10 years, and also decreasing the poverty and stuff in our city. We must step up and do better to guarantee our citizens, better yet our families and our people in our own communities, that they will have a fair opportunity to gain employment. My concern, of course, is improving the quality of life for our children and for our families. If our men are working, they're able to take care of their families. I'm a mother of 6, and I work 3 jobs right now. I'm the president and co-founder of several youth organizations in different parts of the city, and I'm struggling just to pay to get things done. Our basketball teams, even in the summertime. And I do that because of my boys. I see all these other boys out there just struggling. And through my programs, I get them off the street. Through my programs, and when I do my youth career fair every year in the spring, I get several kids off the street when they go to work for Vanessa Laurie Brown, other different people that take my kids from me, Staples, ShopRite, McDonald's. I have contracts with, now I just got a contract through another Marshalls up on Red Lion Road for my 18 and 25. That's what our families need, is something to look forward to, not to stand on the corner. They think they can't get jobs because they can't if all the jobs are going out to people that aren't even Philadelphia residents or from our own communities. Now they're getting these jobs off my back, off my sweat, my tax money that I'm working 3 jobs only to get maybe about an hour and a half, 2 hours of sleep a night. No, that we must do something. We must do better. We must do better to make sure our people, the people that are actually paying your salaries, even though I know you guys are with us, but paying your salaries, you know, to help us work and be able to provide for our families. We must do better. And I'm a different kind of Democrat, and I'm here to support 170-726. Thank you.
Mr. Bussey, before you start, Melissa, the sister there lives on my block, and so she don't just do this down here. She do this at the parking spot before I get in the house. Like, no, wait, hey, she only, well, the one thing I will say, 2 summers ago, I came home and she started talking, but they was cooking, and they actually invited me to the barbecue. I got a hot sausage out of it. You know, I claimed it on my, it was hot sausage. It was good, too. So I appreciate your advocacy and your continued support for our young people. I will tell you that whether it's the Wynn Ballroom or whether it's some of our playgrounds, I make sure somebody from the local area gets on those jobs, and it is harder than you think. Because you're right, they make a promise, and then, you know, oops, and oh, by the way, and I'm about to, and all of those things. So as we try to enforce these laws, as we try to do, we do need teeth. And then the other thing that we must be careful about is not to just pull the emergency switch for nothing, because, you know, we can. We have to be able to move people to do the right thing because it's the right thing to do. And let me tell you why. An opinion changed against his will is opinion held even still. What we're trying to do is create these relationships, and they realize that so-and-so I just hired from down the block was a good worker. I'm gonna keep him on the next job that doesn't have these restrictions. And unfortunately, we have to force people to the table. And we shouldn't have to. People should wanna hire the best person to do the right job because it's the right thing. But until then, we're gonna make sure that they do the right thing. Mr. Bussey, I understand you're a different kind of Democrat, is that right?
Absolutely. Greg's a different kind of Democrat, Mel Wells, Anton Moore, and I'm gonna close with that. You have 26 community activists and leaders around the city, from Anton Moore in South Philly, Mel Wells up in North Philly, from Shantae to Dorisha. You have 26 community leaders have come together in an unprecedented way to do something different, to be a different kind of Democrat, to support you guys. We take an enormous amount of heat by taking a different approach, by supporting you guys. We support Kenyatta, we support Curtis, we support Darrell, and we take a lot of heat over that because they call us sellouts, they call us catering to the system. But our approach is, we need to support good people doing good things. You can't always scream and yell at people. So this is, what I'm sharing with you guys now is that this is an experiment of having every major city activist and leader support you guys. And all I'm saying is, don't let us down. This enforcement bill is just step one. You guys, I don't need to go into all the games that the union's been playing for decades, right? You guys know better than most of us all the games they've been playing. What we need you to do is stop it, and we got your back. So I'm just gonna close with that. You stop all the craziness, we totally got your back. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
That's the shortest speech he ever did.
Yeah, I know. I'm like, what's wrong with him? What they do with my Emmanuel? All right. That's a record. Are there any others to testify, Ms. Williams?
No.
Seeing none, this concludes the, Greg?
I just gotta say one last thing. No, hold on, come on.
You got.
No, I ain't gonna say nothing about that, but I just wanna give you kudos. I was impressed with what you did yesterday.
Thank you, sir. I was raised right. And all my colleagues, I vouch for them.
Question for
Good.
Procurement.
Councilman Green.
Yes, Mr. Chair, I would like to have Trevor Day come back up to the panel.
Commissioner, please. And we have exactly 10 minutes to get this out of here.
Very quick.
Hi.
As a representative of the administration, and actually Ms. Harper may be able to answer this question as well, I just want to make sure, from my understanding, because I've had a chance to talk with the sponsor and some others from the administration, but I wanted to get your perspective on the record in reference to enforcement. From your read of this legislation, do you anticipate any challenges on enforcement of this legislation by this body?
By this body?
Mhm.
Any challenges?
Concerns, well, I'm going to not say challenges, concerns that you may have. I know Ms. Harper raised some issues in reference to like the spirit, but had some concern about subcontractors. I want to get your perspective in that regard.
No, I think, I agree with what Ms. Harper said. I mean, I think the administration and myself personally, we want to create a process to hold vendors more accountable. And we're moving towards that, but it's a couple of years off. And so, you know, it's your, you know, prerogative on moving this bill forward. But I think the administration is, you know, procurement, we're putting in process a vendor performance module. So, you know, again, that doesn't help you now because we have to hold vendors accountable and we have to measure them on performance of their contract, and whether that's, you know, supplier diversity or, you know, delivery of product or whatever, that gets populated in that database.
Right.
And you know, again, this is your prerogative. The intent of what you're trying to do, I agree with.
Okay. I'll just close with that because I think the reason why this legislation is needed at this time is because of the fact we've had so many issues over the years. The two people that just testified earlier, Mr. Richardson and Ms. Woodson, in talking about their experiences as contractors, I think provide ample evidence of why, although the administration is moving forward, I think there's a will there, but we need to have a way now. And I think this legislation provides that opportunity. Thank you, sir.
Councilman, we got 8 minutes. Come on, Councilman Johnson. Shorter claps. Councilman Johnson.
Yeah, just, Ms. Harper, can you come on back up just real quick, please? Just real quick question.
Okay.
Is there a process for verification of subcontractors' commitments when ERPs are submitted?
Absolutely, there is.
Okay.
When subcontractors are identified, they go on what's called a solicitation and commitment form. When that form comes to my office, I sign that, and upon my signature, it becomes a contract, which means that the vendor, the subcontractors that are listed, and the percentage of business that's committed is now, the prime is contractually bound to live up to that, and they have to, any changes for any reason have to be approved by OEO.
All right. When you get a chance, can you provide Tim Roundtree, who's my diversity and inclusion officer in my office, a copy of that paperwork,
Absolutely.
just so we can just
See
have
what
the
it looks like.
procedure
Happy to walk you through it. Yep.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilman. Are there any other questions for this panel? Seeing none, this concludes the public hearing. We will now go into our public meeting to consider an action to be taken on Bill number 170726. The chair recognizes the author of the bill, Councilman O, for a motion on Bill number 170726.
Thank you, Chairman. I move that Bill number 170726 be reported from this committee with a favorable recommendation, and further move that the rules of council be suspended to permit first reading of this bill on the next session of council.
Second.
It has been moved and properly seconded that Bill number 170726 be reported from this committee with a favorable recommendation, and further move that the rules of council be suspended to permit first reading of this bill at our next session of council. All those in favor will say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, seeing none, the ayes have it, and the motion carries. Bill number 170726 will be reported from this committee with a favorable recommendation, with a request that the rules of council be suspended to permit first reading at our next session of council. This concludes the business of the Committee on Commerce and Economic Development for today. Thank you all, thank you all, thank you all for your attendance and being different kind of Democrats. Thank you.